Feeling stuck in a career you chose by default? Or successful on paper, but secretly miserable? Designing your life tackles these familiar frustrations and shows you how to build a life that actually feels good to live, not just one that looks good on a CV. This is a summary of Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, an independent summary created for educational purposes. If this summary resonates with you, I encourage you to purchase the full book and explore it in greater depth. The book offers a refreshing, hands-on approach to finding clarity and direction in life. It throws out the tired idea that you should have everything figured out by your 20s and instead teaches you how to use design thinking, the same method used to create innovative products, to figure out what kind of life you want to live and how to start building it from wherever you are. The authors open by introducing three types of people: Ellen, Janine, and Donald, each stuck in a different way. Ellen chose her university major based on what she enjoyed at the time, only to realize later that liking rocks didn't mean she wanted to be a geologist. Janine climbed the professional ladder to the top and had every marker of success, yet felt deeply unfulfilled. Donald worked a stable job for decades, provided for his family, and did everything right, but found himself asking at 2 a.m., "Why am I still doing this?" These stories reveal the same core issue. They were all living lives shaped by assumptions and outdated beliefs, not intention or joy. This is where design thinking comes in. Unlike traditional problem solving, design thinking isn't about finding the one correct answer. It's about exploration, creativity, and trying things out to see what works. When you apply it to your own life, it becomes less about finding your true calling and more about experimenting, adjusting, and evolving. The first step in this process is recognizing that most of us are operating under dysfunctional beliefs. For instance, many believe that their degree should determine their career or that success automatically brings happiness. Others think it's too late to change course. The authors challenge all of this, reframing the conversation. In reality, most people do not work in fields related to their degree. Success without meaning often leads to burnout, not joy. And it's never too late to pivot. Millions of people in their 40s and beyond are seeking what the authors call an encore career. Rather than prescribing a rigid plan, the book encourages you to start exactly where you are. One of the first exercises involves creating a dashboard for your life, rating yourself in 4 areas: health, work, play, and love. This isn't about judging yourself. It's a way to visualize how you're doing across the board and identify what needs attention. For example, someone might be thriving at work, but completely neglecting their health or personal relationships. Another person might feel stuck not because of their job itself, but because there's no room in their life for play or creativity. Once you see this imbalance clearly, you can begin designing around it. Another key idea is the difference between real problems and what the authors call gravity problems. These are issues that cannot be changed, like aging or the fact that poetry pays poorly, and spending energy trying to fight them only leads to frustration. Designers, the authors say, do not waste time arguing with reality. Instead, they accept what cannot be changed and look for what can be done within those constraints. This frees up your mental energy to focus on creative, actionable possibilities. A big theme throughout the book is reframing. That is, shifting the way you see a situation so that you open up new options. One powerful reframe is replacing the question, "What do I want to be when I grow up?" with "Who do I want to grow into?" That small shift removes the pressure of finding one perfect role and makes space for growth and evolution. Similarly, the book dismisses the idea that you need to find your passion before you can move forward. In reality, passion is often something that develops over time, by trying things, discovering what you enjoy, and building skill. Designing your life also means giving up the idea that there's a single perfect path. There are many potential versions of your life that could work, and the way to discover them is to start prototyping, small, low-stakes experiments that help you learn more about what works for you. This could mean shadowing someone in a job you're curious about, doing a short-term project, or having an informational conversation. These quick experiments are low risk and often lead to insights that you could never have predicted just by thinking or planning. Underpinning all of this are 5 key mindsets that support life design: curiosity, bias to action, reframing, awareness of process, and radical collaboration. Curiosity helps you stay open to possibilities. A bias to action pushes you to stop overthinking and start testing things. Reframing keeps you from getting stuck on unhelpful assumptions. Awareness reminds you that life design is a process, not a one-time decision. And radical collaboration encourages you to seek input from others, because good ideas often come from unexpected conversations. Ultimately, the authors make a compelling case that designing your life is not about perfection or certainty. It is about being engaged, willing to experiment, and committed to building a life that aligns with who you are and what matters to you, not just what looks good on paper. With this mindset shift in place, the next step is to actually start designing. But before diving into big decisions, Burnett and Evans emphasize the importance of wayfinding, the process of navigating forward when a destination is unclear. Instead of setting a rigid 5-year plan, the goal is to notice where your energy is going, what you enjoy, and what leaves you drained. This process begins with awareness. What activities make time fly? When do you feel most engaged? These aren't abstract reflections. The authors encourage keeping a simple log of your daily experiences and emotions, paying close attention to moments of flow, satisfaction, or frustration. Patterns start to emerge once you collect enough data. It is about spotting clues from your real life, not just sitting around daydreaming about possibilities. Once you've gathered some insight, the next phase is to generate ideas, not just one life path, but 3. The authors introduce a core design tool called Odyssey Plans, where you sketch out 3 completely different versions of what your life could look like over the next 5 years. The first version follows your current path, expanding on what you're already doing. The second explores what you would do if the current option disappeared. The third pushes into wild territory, what you would pursue if money and reputation were no object. This exercise is not about choosing the best plan right away. It is about recognizing that there is no single correct life to find. There are multiple good lives you could live, and each comes with its own trade-offs and rewards. By mapping these out visually, you create distance from your assumptions and get to think more creatively. You also give yourself permission to explore ideas that might otherwise seem off-limits. This is where prototyping enters the picture. Instead of making life-altering choices based on assumptions, you run small, low-risk experiments. If you're curious about being a teacher, volunteer at a school, or shadow someone for a day. If a creative project lights you up, commit to a 2-week sprint and see how it feels. These are not meant to be commitments. They are just tools to gather real-world information. Prototypes help you test ideas in motion, and importantly, they force you to interact with people. This social dimension matters. The authors stress the value of having prototype conversations, informal chats with people doing things you're curious about. These conversations often lead to unexpected opportunities, useful advice, and new perspectives that a Google search could never offer. The point is not to ask for a job, but to get behind the scenes and learn how someone got to where they are. A major benefit of this approach is that it takes pressure off decision-making. Most people get stuck trying to pick the right option out of fear they'll make a wrong choice. Burnett and Evans reframe this anxiety completely. They argue that there is no perfect choice. You can only make the best decision based on what you know now, and then test and adjust as you go. This philosophy applies especially to job hunting. In fact, one of the more eye-opening parts of the book is how blunt they are about the myths around landing a dream job. Most people think that if they craft the perfect CV and apply to enough positions, something will work out. But the authors argue that this rarely leads to meaningful opportunities. Instead, most great jobs come through informal networks, conversations, and mutual connections, not job boards. They even suggest flipping the script on job applications entirely. Instead of applying blindly, design your way toward the job by building relationships, testing ideas, and becoming part of the environment you want to enter. The book's chapter on how not to get a job is really about how to design your job search, making it a creative, people-oriented process rather than a numbers game that wears you down. All of this ties back to the broader idea that life design is about action, not introspection. That doesn't mean you skip self-reflection, but it means you don't try to think your way into certainty before doing anything. The book acknowledges that fear and resistance will show up. You might feel uncertain, embarrassed, or even like a fraud when trying something new. That's normal. What matters is learning to see these as part of the process. You do not need to have it all figured out before you begin. In fact, that is the trap most people fall into, believing they need perfect clarity before taking a step. The authors flip that logic. Clarity is not a prerequisite. It is a result of taking action. This approach also helps people who feel like they have already failed. Burnett and Evans introduce the concept of failure immunity, which is not about avoiding mistakes, but developing resilience. In design, every failure is simply data, another piece of feedback. The key is how you frame it. Did the prototype fail? Or did you just learn something you needed to know? When you stop seeing setbacks as personal flaws and start seeing them as useful information, it becomes much easier to keep going. You waste less time agonizing and more time adjusting. Life design also recognizes that no one builds a great life alone. That is why the final piece is building your support team. Your design team can be made up of friends, mentors, or people you trust to challenge your thinking and offer different perspectives. These do not need to be experts, just people who can listen, ask good questions, and help you stay accountable. Having a few key allies makes it easier to experiment, stay motivated, and keep momentum when doubt creeps in. By this point in the process, you're no longer just thinking about what kind of life you should have. You're starting to test and experience the kind of life you could have. That shift from passive rumination to active design is what ultimately builds confidence. Not because you have all the answers, but because you know how to keep going until you find something that works. That is the real power of this method. It teaches you how to keep moving forward, even when the path is not clear. And that is what most people really need, not a master plan, but a process that helps them stay in motion and keep growing. Eventually, designing your life becomes less about solving a single problem and more about developing a sustainable approach to living. Burnett and Evans bring this full circle by focusing on the idea of coherence, the alignment between who you are, what you believe, and what you are doing. When your life is coherent, you feel connected to your work, your values, and your choices. You do not feel like you're constantly forcing yourself through days that make no sense. You start to build momentum. You become more adaptable and open, and life feels more like something you're actively shaping rather than something that is just happening to you. But building this kind of life does not mean everything will go smoothly. A well-designed life still includes detours, wrong turns, and hard seasons. The point is not perfection. The point is to stay in motion, remain curious, and trust that you can make adjustments along the way. In fact, many of the most fulfilling moments in life come from paths we could not have predicted. That is why the authors encourage ongoing iteration. As you grow, your values and interests shift. Your job, relationships, and sense of purpose will evolve too. Design thinking allows you to meet these changes with creativity rather than fear. The book also digs into decision-making, an area where many people freeze. When facing a big choice, the authors recommend combining intuitive and analytical thinking. Look at the facts, yes, but also pay attention to how each option feels in your body. Do you feel energized? Or do you tense up? Sometimes the answer is not clear, and you just have to make a call and move forward. Action brings clarity. Waiting often does not. And if the choice turns out to be wrong, that is part of the process too. One of the most valuable tools from the book is the mindset of radical acceptance, acknowledging reality, dropping resistance, and responding from a place of agency. The authors call out gravity problems, again here to remind you that struggling against what cannot be changed only burns energy. By accepting limits, you can shift your focus to where you still have freedom. In that freedom lies the power to create something new. As the book nears its end, it emphasizes the role of support systems. While designing your life is personal, it is not solitary. You need people who can listen, challenge you, and help you see what you cannot see on your own. That is why the authors suggest creating a life design team, a small group you trust to join you in the process. These are not people who will tell you what to do, but those who will walk beside you as you explore. They help you test ideas, recover from setbacks, and stay honest about what really matters. Collaboration is also key when it comes to expanding your options. The more conversations you have, the more opportunities you discover. Most people underestimate how many others are willing to help, especially when the ask is simply to share their story or advice. Burnett and Evans encourage reaching out regularly, not to network in the traditional sense, but to connect as a curious learner. These conversations often lead to insights you could not have generated alone. They keep you from getting stuck in your own assumptions and open up new paths that were invisible before. Finally, the authors offer a simple but powerful definition of a well-designed life. It is one that feels worth living. It does not mean every day is easy or that you love every task. It means that, on the whole, your life makes sense to you. You understand why you do what you do. You know how your actions reflect your values. You feel like you are moving forward with purpose, not because you found your one true passion, but because you stayed engaged, kept designing, and learned to build meaning through action. Here are 5 practical, memorable takeaways from the book. 1. You do not need to find your passion before starting. Most people discover it through action, not introspection. 2. There is no single right life path. Create and test multiple versions of your future through Odyssey plans and prototypes. 3. If a problem cannot be changed or acted upon, it is a gravity problem. Accept it and focus on where you do have agency. 4. Clarity comes from doing, not thinking. Use small experiments and conversations to explore possibilities and reduce fear. 5. You cannot build a fulfilling life alone. Create a support team to help you stay accountable, inspired, and resilient. You've listened to a summary of Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, created independently for educational purposes. If it resonated with you, consider buying the full book to explore it in greater detail. You just took real time out of your day to reflect on your life and growth, and that says a lot about you. Keep that momentum going by picking one small experiment you can try this week, even if it is just a conversation or a short journal entry. Design is about motion, and you're already moving. Keep going. Well done for taking the time to invest in yourself. That alone puts you ahead of most people.